testing one. Uh-oh. Are you ready to rock? No, sorry. iPhone? Sorry. Right. Some of you have seen me speak before. No two of my talks are ever the same. This is the first one that is fueled by two 7.5% Belgian beers. So I have no idea exactly what I'm going to say until I've already said it. And I wasn't worried about that until I saw my CEO about 30 seconds ago. So now I actually have to care what I say. Oops, never mind. The very nice organizers here offered to come up and introduce me. I said, well, you could do that, or I can make your life easier and I'll do it myself. So this guy's life is a little bit easier, but my life is a little more difficult. The topic that I wanted to speak to you about can't be seen because the sun is shining. If one of you can control the weather and bring in some clouds or something so you can read the displays, it would probably help. Otherwise, I will be reading a little bit of what you can see. Topic is the internet, or pwned, owned, whatever you want to say. How I learned to stop worrying and love the internet. Over the last 9 years that I've been at Access for All, almost a decade coming on, a lot of things have happened on the internet for security. Some good, some bad. Some of the most terrible things ever, such as government regulation, has come along and really taken a lot of the fun out of what it is we do. Now, as you can see, I'm sporting a somewhat fashionable hairstyle, and sometimes I joke that I used to have a full head of hair before I started doing computer security, and it's true. There's a lot of frustration in what I do, a lot of frustration in the work, in dealing sometimes with customers who have anti-clue. And what I wanted to talk to you about today is some of the things that we see, some of the things that we have to put up with as an ISP, and yet still remained happy and cheerful about the technology that I think most of you like. I can't promise this is going to be funny or interesting. We'll see. So, on with the show. My name is Scott A. McIntyre. I'm one of many McIntyres. I am Scott A. McIntyre. I am a security officer for Access for All Internet. I am one of 5 kernel members of KPN CERT. That's the Computer Emergency Response Team for all of KPN. I also sit on the board of directors of an organization known as FIRST, the Forum of Incident Response and Security Teams. There's a couple of people here who are FIRST members. There's some of you who are KPN victims, and there's even more of you, I hope, who are Access for All customers. Yay. Yeah, there we go. So that's who I am. Unless you were planning on Kaminsky hacking me. How many of you are familiar with what I'm talking about? To what happened to poor Dan? Dan, are you here? Right. In which case, my name is Tim Kauk from Stichting Brain. Have fun. I want to ask if Tim is here. I really don't want to meet him. So, this is the foundation of my talk. I wanted to have a series of things to think about based upon the last decade of computer ISP security. Are people panicking about solving the wrong problems? I see people out there in the antivirus community and even in the incident response community forming war rooms and looking at every little attack and being ready to call the White House over the Twitter attack. I'm not making that up, right? There were people who were in discussion with the White House over Twitter getting a DDoS. When you read the press, you can understand why people might think that the sky is falling. Let me tell you, hello, it's not. It's definitely not. And I think that there's bigger and more ugly things to worry about. For example, supply chain security. I don't know how many of you were here for the talk before this one, which is talking about some of the low-level electrical engineering, some of the things that are happening at the firmware level. There's some great open-source projects, but there's also a lot of unknowns that's happening inside of hardware. Do you know who programmed the firmware of your DSL modem, of the switch, of the network, of your access point? Do you know whether it's a good guy or a bad guy or who knows what? Oh, yes, I learned something else. Apparently, their camera can't see me if I stand over here. So there's a good chance that I might end up moving over here more just to annoy that guy who told me not to stand on this side of the line. So I wanted to say that in my job, I have had to accept that the internet, and I think all of you need to accept this as well, the internet is compromised. There's good guys, there's bad guys. What we need is more understanding of a Gestalt principle of and this is where I was going to tease you, almost a hippie-esque view of the internet, of looking at it as a whole, a holistic approach to understanding that security isn't just about the latest technology. It isn't about the latest patch or the best thing you can do to detect this type of exploit. You have to patch the meatware. So the theme of my talk is think about the people who are causing the problems. Think about the people who are trying to solve the problems, and don't just look for a bit of code that you can upload to make your problems go away, because I guarantee it doesn't work that way. You have to be responsible for your own actions. Right, so I have 108 slides, and this actually has full recursion. You can see the you are here, and it even points to a you are here. That took a while to build. It goes deeper. We're not going to cover all of this. We're going to jump around a little bit. As I say, I've only got technically an hour, and I've blown it just introducing myself for the last 10 minutes. 3 minutes and 2 seconds, actually. So it's been an interesting 4 years, the last 4 years since a congress like this. A lot's been happening on the internet. There's some great new technologies out there, a lot of cybercrime. I probably shouldn't ask this, and I'd be surprised if anybody raises your hand. Has anybody here been a victim of computer crime? Thank you for raising your hand for other people who you're sitting next to aren't. I'm lucky so far that I don't know if I have, and I think that's one of the problems. When you look at some of the really clever attacks that are taking place today, man-in-the-middle attacks, SSL hijacking, some of the tools that have been announced in public but no doubt used in private from DEF CON last week, from Black Hat sessions, there's a lot of risks out there. And everyone and everything is an interesting target these days. And cloud computing, I think we've all heard about that. That's something that makes me, well, wake up in horrible sweats in the middle of the night, and not just because I had a little too much to drink. It really is a horrible thing to think about for trying to secure. So what are we going to try to talk about? Well, I'm going to talk about what it is that I do over the last few years, the things that keep me really busy, the things to think about, things to worry about. And if you have ever heard me speak before, one of the constant criticisms that I have heard is, Scott, you've made us feel this horrendous feeling of despair. We're doomed. Yeah, it does. And I really wish that you could see this because it's much funnier when you can actually read it. It's always darkest just before it goes pitch black. And I don't know if that's where we are with internet security or not. I sometimes think we are. Lately, there's been some interesting questions, and we will eventually get to the end. Unfortunately, the person who speaks after me, if you're in the room, you're doomed. But as we get to the end, I had a really interesting conversation with a good friend of mine who is pretty much the representative sample of the people who would never attend an event like this. But that's the people we have to help. Those are the standard customers. That's the majority of people on the internet today. We'll get there eventually. So, what is it I do all day? Well, it's actually fairly simple. At least that's what I'm accused of by the marketing and sales department. They don't like this whole, he turns things off. Well, it's not quite that simple. There's a lot more to it. Actually, in reality, the big picture of what I do all day looks a little bit like this. There's a whole bunch of types of information that as a security guy, you have to aggregate in an ISP. You've got people reporting things to abuse addresses.